Right. We're just going to wait a few more minutes here and let a few more folks trickle in. Thank you for everyone that has shown up here so far. We're excited for today's webinar. Put together a fun little demonstration to go along with this. And I'm really excited about that. So we're just going to give it a couple more minutes here and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So we've got a decent amount of folks here. So I think we're ready to get started. All right. So today is a session for everyone. We're going to be talking about theming in design systems. Today, I am your speaker. My name is Jake Love. I am a senior solutions engineer here at Knapsack. We got a full agenda. We're going to start out by talking about theming. We're going to run through some high-level concepts and definitions. We're going to talk about it's better with design tokens, an enhanced theming process. We're going to talk about planning for themes, 4 aspects you should consider. Picking our approach, the 3 most common strategies we've seen for teams that are applying themes to their design system. We're going to talk about how the process is Knapsack enhanced with our token engine that we've spent a good amount of time in previous webinars going over. Pair it up with our asset sets, which is what allows us to specify collections of JavaScript, CSS, and do a bunch of other really cool things. And of course, we're going to tie this all together with a live demonstration at the end, showing off some root level theming inside of Knapsack. So before we get too far, I'm just going to get this out of the way. There is no one right way to structure themes. As with most choose your own adventure games, your choice is determined by your specific situation and circumstances. This comes down to things like constraints imposed by specific frameworks that you're using, platform-specific requirements, supported tech stacks, corporate technical requirements, etc. So what is theming? In a more general sense, or in a flat sense, theming is the act of applying stylistic expression to structured markup. Stylistic expression being CSS, structured markup being HTML. In the world of design systems, we look at that a little bit differently. Theming is the process of assigning stylistic decisions to a curated component library. Stylistic decisions here are things like our design tokens, global and base styles, utility classes, etc. Our component library is exactly what it sounds like, our coded templates of our components. Now, what are the most common use cases that we see for theming in design systems? The first one we see a lot is multi-branded. I didn't add this here, but it's also in the same level here, multi-segment. And this could be something where you've got multiple products or applications with a common base. And in the segment example, you'd have common base, but your segments are the different themes of your application. We also see presentation modes a lot, which I think folks are fairly familiar with by now, dark and light modes. And of course, white labeling, which is one of the funnest adventures in terms of theming inside of your design system. That is essentially creating your own internal bootstrap and delivering those assets and those utilities to the rest of your team downstream, enabling them to build out additional properties using your components, which is a lot of fun. This is a slide I've left in here a couple times, but we're going to spend some time talking about how theming inside of design systems is just better with design tokens. So design with tokens and build with tokens. For those of you that were here on some previous webinars, this is going to be just a really quick refresher. I just kind of wanted to get a quick picture out there for what is a design token in a raw format and what that token turns out to be in terms of an artifact once it's compiled. And so we've seen this slide before, but again, I just want to quickly cover this. Design tokens allow us to have this agnostic structure that give us this ability to define things, to name things, to be able to talk about these things with consistent language. And when it's in a token format like this, it's not concerned with the end state that it's going to be. But what we see is we've got this agnostic version here, and it comes out and we've got our Sass variables, our CSS variables, JavaScript exports. For those of you that are on here that are wondering how we tie this into mobile, we've also got iOS Swift format, Android XML. And so, yeah, if you're interested in talking more about that stuff, reach out to us because we'd like to get into those weeds. But again, this is just kind of what I wanted to show here. It's just the structure. And then what we get is this ability to use these tokens in basically any other property, any other format that pretty much exists. So how do design tokens then enhance this theming process? Well, they remove guesswork. So they remove guesswork and instead increase our development velocity. So they provide a solid brand-centric source of truth for the smallest repeatable aspects of your site. Because again, your repeated patterns aren't just your components. They should be the consistent things that are, your brand style guide, essentially. So they also allow teams to focus on innovation and adding new value, all while being able to rely on brand consistency that's already been built into the stack. That's part of those stylistic decisions that we talked about in that previous slide. They provide a common language and definitions. They allow designers, developers, and everyone else to work confidently together to be able to talk about things using the same exact language. And lastly, they provide a subatomic stylistic structure and hierarchy, enabling teams to generate new themes through the use of tokens and a mapping layer, which is what we're going to get into today. Now, before we go too much further, I kind of wanted to show on a high level what this process looks like when we've got a new theme that we want to apply to our design system. That first step is generally that the design team begins on that new theme. And there's a process and a flow that various teams use to then outline the needs of those new tokens. Those token values then are transitioned into development, either through Jira tickets, Slack pings. Hopefully there's something that's a little bit more solid than that. But the dev team will work on that. They add the new tokens and the mapping. That then is released through a build process. Once things are merged into the main branch, we get those NPM packages that are published. And then the end result is that we're able to implement those things in production and we get our delighted users in the end. Now, what are some common organization patterns for tokens when you're looking at themes? A lot of times we see things on a global level. Those are things like spacing, font sizes, breakpoints, colors, things that you're going to be able to use throughout multiple brands, things that are just consistent in your system. Sometimes they start with global, and then it's global spacing, global breakpoints, global color. Sometimes they're just top level tokens. Again, that really comes down to what works best for your teams. I tend to favor having the global as the beginning part of that token. Then, of course, we've got things like brand. So if you've got your system split up between different brands, then you're going to have those brands. Same thing with modes, segments, like primary, research, pediatrics, those kinds of things, and also component level. And this is also the one where you kind of have to make the choice. Do you want to have a lot of your component level tokens defined at the same level as all the rest of the tokens, or should that occur at a mapping layer? And I tend to lean towards the mapping layer. It seems to have a lot more control in my experience. So when we're planning for our themes, there's 4 things that we really want to consider here. The first one is our source design decisions. A lot of times that encompasses things like our design tokens, how we structure them, like we were just talking about. The next part is the styling engine that we'd like to use. And that implementation flow is heavily dictated by the specific style engine that we select. If you're going to be doing things with Sass or less or CSS and a post CSS preprocessor, that kind of changes how you're tactically going to go about implementing these things. Then of course you've got your coded components. And that's pretty important because certain frameworks are a little bit trickier, a little bit harder to override. And so you got to be careful about how you want to approach your coded templates. A lot of times we tend to recommend that teams will build up as much as they can on their own, and then just apply libraries and things as needed. It allows for better scalability. It's a lot harder to remove things than it is to add things, and it just seems to work out a little bit smoother. And then the fourth thing is the implementation approach, which kind of encompasses all three of the previous items as well. And that really is the model used to curate and propagate the themes. And you need to choose really between complexity on the token side or build side. And really, there can be a little bit in between. When we talk about complexity on the token side, what we're talking about is mapping that happens by reference, and we end up with a single design token value. And even though that value is identical to the token that it was referenced from. An example of this would be that we've got a color token called color blue 100, and we've got a button background we want to style within our pediatrics theme. And so to do this, we'd add a new token called pediatrics button background and set that value as a reference token to color blue 100. After our tokens were compiled, we'd have a new shiny pediatrics button background token with the same value as color blue 100. And then, of course, in our pediatrics button styles, then we reference that token, and then it's applied from there. If we look at this from the complexity on the build side, which is my preference, mapping happens in the mapping layer. So there's a separate style sheet where the theme variables are mapped as tokens. In this kind of similar example, it's kind of the same exact thing that we're going for. We've got a color token, color blue 100. We've got a pediatrics theme. We want to style this button. But what we do at this case is we either add a new style sheet to handle the mapping, which is a demo that we're going to walk through here shortly, or we update an existing one, and that can have multiple root level tokens as long as they are scoped by class. So in our root level definition, we'd add a new CSS variable called pediatric button background. We'd set that value to color blue 100, just like before. And then just like the last example, we then set that in our pediatric button styles. So a lot of things are similar there, but really there's differences in how and where the mapping occurs. And again, that's a decision that your team needs to make. So we're talking about strategies, we're talking about approaches. I kind of want to talk about the three most common strategies that we have seen over the years working with various teams here. The first one is static theming, and that's most common with styling engines like SAS and Less. The result of that is usually a self-contained CSS artifact. Doesn't usually require any other assets unless you've got a library like Normalize or something that you're trying to keep outside. It could contain one or all of your themes, and it usually relies on a parent class to toggle the different themes. Unless your model is based on a one bundle for each theme approach, then of course you're just swapping out that bundle. The next one is root level theming, and this is what we're going to be showing off today. This is common with a CSS approach or a hybrid approach, and I'm calling the hybrid approach if you're using like a compiling tool like SAS or something like that, but you're still using CSS variables in order to accomplish your themes. Usually that contains 3 or more levels in the cascade. That first level is going to be your design tokens in the form of CSS custom properties, because then you have that global root level definition. Level 2 is a theme mapping layer where your root level definitions are mapped to your token specific or your theme specific tokens. And then you've got the level 3, which is the stylistic foundation. And that's the base styles that really encompass all of your components and things that all the themes are going to be able to pull from together. This approach relies on the cascade and the inclusion of CSS assets, and the order is important. It does not necessarily require a parent class to toggle. Again, that's really situation dependent. In fact, the example we're going to show, it doesn't have to do with a class at all. It just has to do with displaying and showing different bundles. And then the third approach we see is component level theming, and this is more popular for dynamic frameworks, things like React or Vue. Depending on the specific framework, there are various tools and libraries and different methodologies for achieving themes at the component level. For example, in React, you might use a library such as styled components, pretty popular one, or vanilla extract, which is another robust library that's pretty great. Couple those things with a theme provider component, and then you pass down your context. In this example, you'd be writing your component styles and structure in JavaScript. Tokens would then be passed into the wrapping theme provider. This really relies on theme context being passed down to components. Now, how do we do all of this inside of Knapsack? This kind of goes into the Knapsack enhanced process. Again, if you've been here for our past webinars, we've done entire sections talking about our token engine and what you can do with these tokens. You can find those on our website. And so, yeah, our design token engine, our design tokens that we have in this, they become consumable artifacts. So as people are, adding these to our system and they're being documented because they're first-class citizens inside of our tool, and you're just able to kind of continue to use those and build off of them. Those artifacts are then applied within our design system styles, the global and the base level, as well as the component level. So our design token engine is there to assist in helping to generate and organize this stuff. And then, of course, our asset sets. Asset sets, like I said earlier, are the individual collections of CSS and JavaScript. And a lot of times you have a collection for each theme. They can be added globally so that all components have the ability to select from all themes in your system, or you can be a lot more prescriptive. And if you are, currently building out a theme and you are adding components as, component by component basis, then inside your component configuration, you can actually specify themes that aren't on the global level. And then lastly, this all gets tied together with our theme switcher, which if you're on a pattern page, you'll see a little drop down top right, and then you can actually choose between your asset sets to reflect the different themes using the exact same structured markup, the exact same coded component library. Okay, and that brings us into our implementation time, root level theming inside of Knapsack. So let's do this. Let's make sure we've got Knapsack running locally. And we do. Here we go. Got our little Marvel design system that I've created here. And we're just going to go ahead and actually, before we do this, let's take a look at what I did here. I added some basic design tokens like we talked about. I got some colors here to kind of outline some base things in our themes. We've got some breakpoints. So, if I keep on building out this demonstration and continue to get as good of webinar attendance as we're getting right now, we'll have a lot more demos and bring in some responsive aspects to it. We've got some spacing tokens, box shadow tokens. I've got a bunch of other tokens, but I didn't necessarily create a bunch of demos for them. We've got our components here. I got a fun little button set up here, so you can actually kind of see, the various styles that I've created as well in this. We've also got a little nav bar, pretty simple, showing our Marvel logo. We can hide the logo if we want to create a spacer. And then I've also got this little baseball card here. And so what I've done is I've assembled a layout using all of these tools. And what we've got is we've got this Marvel card that is on brand, and it's got all of Marvel's base stuff here. And I'm calling this theme Iconic. And we've got a second theme in here as well. We've got God of Mischief. We've got our Loki here. And for this live demo, we're going to go ahead and add a brand new theme. And so let's go ahead and switch over to our repository. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our packages, because this is where all of our code lives. All these things, again, get released as an NPM package at the end of the build process. I'm going to go into my styles in my source directory, and I've got these themes down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up the Loki theme. I'm going to copy what I've got here. I'm going to say new file. Let's call this theme Wakanda. Paste this in. Change Wakanda because I like my notes to match. We're going to actually, before I change this, we're going to add some design tokens here in a second. So let's see here. We've got our design tokens. Let's go ahead and open this over here. Okay, and then give me 1 second. So I've already spent some time kind of working on this, but let's just say that I had this in a ticket someplace or a Figma file that was representing, the two, primary, secondary colors that are going to kind of encompass this. And so here we go. We've got some Wakanda colors in here, and that should build us our new tokens. And then what we've got here, this is sort of the mapping layer that we were talking about, and how I've set this up. And again, no one right way to do this. So if some folks are at home with some notes, feel free to send them along, and I'll take a look at them. But what we have is we've got these top level theme categories here. We've got a heading font, color primary, color secondary, color white, in case we have like some off-white scenarios. And then we've got some component level variables here. And again, these are all kind of, either pulling from our specific themes up here, or they're pulling from global values, which as we saw the structure, here I got some globals, things like borders, breakpoints, font sizes, spacing, all kinds of cool things like that. And so, yeah, we're going to go ahead and replace a couple of these with our new tokens. So Wakanda font family heading, Wakanda font family heading. Same for all these, Wakanda color plum, and so on and so forth. And there's one I'm going to grab here. We're going to replace the default card background. So we'll go ahead and save that. And let's see here. I need to add my new asset set. And I put this all together. So here we've got our asset sets. These are collections of our JavaScript and our CSS. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy our Loki theme. And then we're just going to go ahead and make a little change. So I'll change this to Wakanda. And then I'm going to change this to Wakanda forever. And then let's see, normalize design tokens. So here's our layers. There's our new theme. We've got our styles right here. So we'll go ahead and save this. And the thing I always forget is to add it to our global here. So we'll add it there. That way we can get our new theme. Okay. And then let's switch back over and then let's switch over to Wakanda forever. And now we just very quickly, probably in like 3 minutes, just added a brand new theme to this system. And any other place that this thing was integrated, whether primary or secondary or, heading fonts, you can add body fonts, all kinds of things like that. And then within changing about 4 or 5 variables, you can get a very distinct different look, which is, I think, pretty cool. So the end result is we get these 3 solid different themes, and we can do some cool stuff. Like, let's go ahead and pull this one over. Let's get 2 more of these. I just like to see these things side by side. Whenever I'm building themes, it's always cool to kind of see how everything kind of stacks up. So we got our Icona theme. Let's get our God of Mischief theme there. And then lastly, let's get our Wakanda Forever theme. And there we go. We just implemented some brand new themes. Cool. Let's open it up now for some question and answer time. Oh, we already got some that are piling in here. Let's open this up. Oh, mostly just comments. Folks are saying that was a great demo. Thank you very much. It was fun to put together, and I like to do my Marvel theme stuff here. So let's see here. We'll give it a couple minutes to see if anyone has any themes there. And then we'll go from there. Oh, hey, Adam. Haven't seen that name in a while. Good to see you on here. How long does it take you to assemble the basic setup for themes here before adding a new one? That kind of really depends on, the complexity of the needs of your theme. For what I put together, just like I got a card, a button, nav bar, I had 3 components that I was generally working with. It didn't really take much time at all. And kind of what you do a lot of times when you're doing this, if we break some of this out, let's actually look at some component styles. Like let's look at the card, for example. And when we look at the card, let's get these theme variables over here. We expose different aspects of our components that would be themable. And so you don't want to specify every variable to be themable, because and you'll honestly end up with some pretty ugly examples, or it'll take you a lot longer than you'd like to roll out new themes. What I mean by that is, like, when we look at this, if we actually wanted to get granular in the card, like, there's 7 different variables here. So, but we can get very specific. We want to change our card background, our default thumb, the title color, the title font, the text color, the border width, all the things like that are sort of like the smallest aspects. Again, those small repeatable patterns in your system, you can get prescriptive with. And so for the nav bar, I'm only saying that we should be able to change the bar background. That's it. And so some components, it might be one variable to make that component themable. For other components, it could be 7 or 8. It could be 20. Just kind of depends on how complex you'd like that to be. Let's see here. Got some more in here. Is there a direct competitor to Storybook? Looks like it was. Is this a direct competitor to Storybook? Absolutely. Yes, it is. Yeah, we have some sections on our website that kind of like, I think, show the differences there, but absolutely. One thing that obviously, pushes this envelope a little bit further is that what I did was I created these new themes, but I went beyond just themes and being able to show off different things. I actually created some documentation here. And so you actually see here is our actual colors that we're using in the system. And so if I was to change one of these colors, you would actually see those changes affect. And so in fact, I didn't test this in my lab demo, but let's just try it. Let's see here. Let's change this to like a much lighter green. Save this change. And then I believe if we go into our baseball card, we take a look at our God of Mischief colors here. Yeah, see, we have that. So we have an entire tokens system that's integrated with this. So it's a lot more than just like we do similar features in Storybook. We have a lot additional things on top of that. We're really the next generation tool for design systems, if I could be so bold to say that. And so, yeah, we can do some really cool things here. You can do other things with all this stuff as well. I mean, we can show variations, so I created these buttons here, and then I can say, show me every single style of a button, show me every single size of a button. And so a lot more than just building out patterns. Plus, there's also this other aspect that, if I just wanted to go into here and I just wanted to like build out a brand new card, I could do that pretty quickly, actually, So if I just said, give me a brand new card, I'm a non-technical user, by the way. Let's say I'm just someone that's using this system and I have a new title like demos are cool and Marvel BS for the win. And maybe I have some text in here like this is some really cool text, and there's only 2 things here. I don't know. I'm just reaching for stuff. A lot of pattern. Let's create a button. Before we were, I think, showing like the secondary button. Sorry, all my changes are just like slowly creeping in here while I'm doing this. But again, I can just quickly generate something like this. And, let's add paragraph tag to this. And so that'll actually be spaced. And then you see that we actually get these production ready code here. Of course, my compiler is compiling as I'm going, but, and again, if I was a non-technical user and I just created this card, this is already something that we've got in our system. You can just copy this. And I actually did this in a past webinar. I created a whole layout and then I just copied it. And then I used a create React application and I just pasted the code that was in there, swapped out the styles, and we had a full page app with production ready code, all just assembled from stuff inside of our design system. So it's really powerful. You can do a lot of cool things with it. Let's see. Couple more questions here, which is great. I think we've got about a minute or so left in this webinar. So let's see. Can you get an overview on how tokens are applied to components for governance sake? Let's see here. So we don't have anything that's like built into the system like this per se that says like, hey, these tokens are used in this system. But what you can do is you can do things like look into the various components or design tokens that are in the system. And so if we set it up this way, we could do something like adding a section here and say, brand color scheme, or let's see, this is the card, right? So you could say something like maybe like card color scheme or card colors. And then we'd say add our design tokens. And then let's just go ahead and show off our, let's do the Wakanda colors. And we'll grab our colors here from that list and we'll just use our color swatches. And so really quickly, we got this thing here. We got this set up. If I was looking at our Wakanda theme, Wakanda forever, flip this over. I've got these colors here. And again, this would affect everything. So in this example, you'd probably have a button specific token, right? Instead of like a mapping layer for this, but the example will still be here. If I go inside of this and I'm like, let's use a lighter purple, and I save this change after things compile. Let's see here, I'll refresh it. And oops, I got my different theme here, but refresh this, and there we go. We got our brand new color just right there. And so if you structured this right, you spent some time and you added, your values here, and you added the different token levels here, then yeah, you could be sort of like adjusting things on the fly right here. And you'd be able to see sort of what goes into that on a larger scale. All right, let's see a couple more. What sort of things can you change with a theme? Is it any token? Could you change typography and spacing? Yeah, you can change just about anything. Anything that could be a one-to-one stylistic property, you can create as a token. Strings can be tokens if you're using some kind of a styling engine that has some kind of conditional thing where you can actually check the value of the token and do something with it. You can do some really cool stuff with that. And so, I mean, I'm changing the backgrounds, of these things right here with a token. And so you can do a lot. They're very powerful. Let's see how to deal with multiple values behind one property, like box shadow 5, 10, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. Yeah. So if we look at our design tokens and we actually take a look at our box shadow, we've got exactly kind of what you're talking about there. If I can zoom in, you can see we've got these multiple values that are a little bit more complex. And so depending on what the category is that the demo is attempting to show, it will look for those kinds of things. And so here we're actually showing our shadow category, but we actually are using our box shadow tool. And so there are times where if you are using, let's say you have our breakpoints, if you were to attempt to pass in the color palette, you'd get an error message and that wouldn't work. So the various demos for tokens are going to be the things that are how you apply those. And of course, if there isn't a specific demo today, we do have a table view, and you can drill this down as well, and you can say, only give me my breakpoints, for example. And you can display these all over the place. And these are really cool. These are dynamic. You can click these and copy the values. You can use them right away in your system. Pretty powerful stuff. Let's see, we got a few more questions here. Let's see, how do you ensure accessibility with contrast ratios? That's a great question. This is one of those things that, it's one of the things that is really great about Knapsack is that it gets out of the way of any kind of engineering workflow or task that you'd like to do. You can be very prescriptive for it. And so if we actually look at our code base here, everything in here is a mono repo. And so at each one of these packages here, except for the HTML one, they all have a package JSON. Actually, the HTML one has a package JSON. It's just that we're not publishing it as a package. And so each one of these have their own build process. And we're using Lerna. And so if we run a Lerna build at the root of our repo, it'll go into every single one of our packages that we've specified and run the build command for that package. And so what we can do is then we can sort of add some additional things on here. And so when it runs build, in this example, it checks to see if we have a dist directory and then copies our fonts over. So that way things are in the right state so we can use them correctly. This could also be something where you could add an accessibility checker, some accessibility tool. And maybe there would be something in here that's called test. And so you could then run that. And then, we're using out of the box some GitHub actions to run our stuff in this little main runner here. And so you could then go ahead and use those tests inside your CI as well. And so it all kind of just comes along for the ride. Let's see. This is like the most questions we've ever had for a webinar. This is great. Let's see here. So we know this is. Would you say Knapsack also improves upon Style Dictionary, or is there room for both to work concurrently? I would say it improves upon Style Dictionary. There's a couple things that we did. Well, there's a couple reasons why we decided to kind of roll our own. And one of those things is that we wanted to have a lot more control over possible transforms that our customers would need. We also, at the time of writing it, we realized that in Style Dictionary and some of the other tools that folks were using, that you had to name your token very specifically in order to get the transform to catch it. And what we found a lot of times was our customers, they didn't know that they needed to name a color starting with color so that the system would register it as a color, for example. And so we thought, hey, why don't we build a tool that was a little bit more intelligent in terms of being able to look at the value of the token and then assert what the type is from that point. And that allows us to do things like, if the name doesn't start with color, but it's a hex code or an RGBA or HSLA or something like that, we can then go ahead and transform that into an iOS token, an Android XML token, which have very different format requirements than, say, like, a JavaScript export. And so that's kind of why we did that. But you'll be right at home if you've been using Style Dictionary. It's very similar. In fact, I'm pretty sure you could copy paste over and you'd be just fine. Let's see here. Last but not least, let's see here. Got a couple more. A lot more, actually. Folks can stick around as long as we want. We are recording this too, so if you got to jump, this will be available. Let's see. What is the best way to learn more about Knapsack? Well, there's lots of ways to do that. Going to our website and checking out our blog is a really great way to do that. Signing up for these webinars is another really great way to do that. But of course, if your team has got some specifics around design systems, things that you're trying to accomplish, things especially like tooling and theming and how to accomplish those things, please reach out to our team, send us an email, and we would love to connect with you. We kind of go from there. So let's see. How do you port design tokens into programs like Sketch? And actually real quick, I didn't say the email. That is hello@knapsack.cloud. So if you've got any questions, you'd like to pair up with us to kind of go over your design system needs, hello@knapsack.cloud. Okay, so the question here was, how do you port design tokens into programs like Sketch or Figma for the sake of keeping design assets current with the actual theme files? That's a great question. And that's a question a lot of our customers have asked. Lots of different ways to go about solving that. But one thing that's really exciting, actually, in the last couple of weeks, our production team was working on some cool things with our CEO, actually, working on some fun little demos there. And they actually worked out a little prototype for a Figma plugin. And so, keep your eyes open, your ears out there for when we have a webinar where we actually go over our Figma integration. That will happen soon. But right now we're presently working on solving that issue. And so, yeah, currently working on that. Let's see, what else we got here? Oh, someone sent over a slide for our article 101, Knapsack versus Style Dictionary. So that's pretty cool. That's in this list as well. And then let's see what else we got here. And that was from Aaron. Thank you for sending that over, Aaron. Let's see, a couple more. You added a theme from the code, then changed the value of a color token on the app. How does it sync in your code back? This is one of those things where I was saying that tokens for us are a first-class citizen. We don't just handle patterns and variations. We're not just doing documentation. Tokens are a huge aspect of our system. And so they're completely integrated. That was another thing, is that we didn't want to have to take, a style dictionary format and then do some transpiling and some, engineering black magic to get it into a state that our application could use. And so that's why we went about sort of doing our own system here. And what happens is we've got our design tokens. And when one of these things gets compiled, our system is able to be aware of the different formats that are available. And I'm fairly confident it looks at one of these formats here. And then we get that right inside of our system. And so whenever we change a value, that value will also be changed here. And so you see that this change here from that Loki, that green color that we made, it shows up here. And so it's a two-way thing, so if I'm working locally as an engineer and I make this change here, then you'll also see that reflected in the code. The compile process will build the new tokens. And so then when we've got the theme that shows up, it'll see that change and it just kind of comes in for the ride, just flows in. Yeah, it's super powerful there. Let's see here. And the last one was just, looks like someone was saying thanks and great to see you. Great to see you too. Yeah, I think that pretty much concludes our session here. super appreciate all of these questions. Wow, these are great. Before I end the session, I'm going to make sure that I get these in the snapshot. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We're going to have this in a format that is going to be on our website here shortly. And we'll be seeing you at the next one. So thank you very much, everybody.